The song cycle, Cycles of My Being, parallels the mission and vision of the Brothers Network for the past decade. We both share the notions of being black beyond boundaries with a focus on high art and culture to demonstrate our brilliance. So, why do you believe the world is more open to hearing our stories and experiences now?
Well, I think the world is open because I think now we've gotten the opportunity to prove ourselves. I think people have pigeonholed us and kind of thought what we are without letting us say who we are, without giving us the opportunity to define our own selves. And so, for me, I think, of course, we are on the side of having had our first black president, and so we've experienced that, and I think people are seeing men of color excelling in so many different things. If it's business, it's law, it's sports, also classical music. There's so many things that we excel at, and I think people are hopefully open to see us to thrive in whichever genre that we apply ourselves and commit ourselves to.
Absolutely. In the months ahead, you'll bring this opera performance to Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York City, all of which are cities the Brothers Network operates in.
Mm-hmm.
So why these opera companies? And do you plan to take Cycles of My Being to Europe, let's say specifically Paris or any other European nation?
Now we're just in the beginning phases of Cycles of My Being. I am an artistic advisor at Opera Philadelphia. That's my home company, if you want to say that. And they are very interested in supporting me and my aspirations. And so when I brought this project to them, they were very open to take it on. They wanted to support me, my endeavors, and my artistic vision. And so it all came to fruition by me talking to the general director there, David Devan, and him wanting to invest, again, their resources into this project for me. So Lyric Opera Chicago, where I'm doing that also as well, and Carnegie Hall is the other place that's the kind of like the trifecta of this song cycle. All of these things, all of these companies have initiatives to try to expand diversity, to try to reach out to people, to try to serve the people of these various communities. And so this is why I chose these companies. They're very highly visible. Of course, they do tremendous work. And again, there are people that want to really expand diversity and to see people of all different races and genres doing things and really with their artistic visions to expand those.
That's great. In 2012, the Brothers Network provided audience development and engagement for Breathe and Imagination in Hartford, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And this was a play that told the story of Roland Hayes, the first world-renowned African-American classical vocalist. So which black men who are classical and opera performers inspire you?
There's so many, and they're probably, not household names. Of course, the great Paul Robeson, who was also a political activist, an athlete, an actor. Paul Robeson. There's a gentleman by the name of George Shirley, who's about 85 or 86 years old, African-American man, who was probably the first who got a chance to sing in some of these important theaters. As you mentioned, Roland Hayes, Vincent Cole, Donnie Ray Albert, Simon Estes are names, again, that have achieved great things in the classical field, but haven't gotten necessarily all the recognition that they are deserving of. So I have my role models out there, and those are the people that inspired me to pursue my dreams of being an opera singer.
And at what point in your life were you made aware of these individuals and of just the music in general? Because particularly, you hear the narrative of young black men aren't really drawn to this type of music, this type of genre of work, and kind of what you do. So what was the initial draw for you?
Well, one of the things, I think I was involved in music, and I was involved in music in church and high school, choir and stuff like that, and I had people who told me that I had a certain talent. I had someone who pointed me out, one of my teachers, and said, there's something unique about the voice you have, so you have to pursue it. And so when I said, okay, I'm going to be singing classical music, when I look in the mirror every day, I get up and I see a black face. And so you always trying to find a common thread in what it is you do. If you're a lawyer, you probably want to be inspired by someone who's an African-American lawyer or an African-American athlete that achieved, and so to feel like you're not the only one. And so there's so many people that are out there, but few of them were tenors, and tenors in opera always are the romantic leads. And so I did my research, and the information's out there. I had to dig for it a little bit, but I came to know some of these people that did excel and achieve great things in the world of classical music that are men of color.
That's great. And what do you want black men to take away from Cycles of My Being?
what I want black men to take away from Cycles of My Being, I want them to feel like, hey, this is also my story. Some of the questions that we ask, to be in control of the narrative. A lot of times, I don't think people try to put themselves in our shoes. You know, if we do great things, if we work hard, if we achieve great things, if we travel, if we, reach our goals, I think upon sight we're reduced to nothing. People don't know that I've traveled to. Everyone doesn't know that I've traveled the world and got a chance to meet presidents and kings and be in the presence of great people, and that I speak 4 languages and all these other things. You could look at me, if I have on a hoodie from going to the store, you would think that I have done none of those things, that I'm uneducated, that I don't know how to put together a sentence. There's a lot of things that I think people will assume of me just upon sight, and I hate the fact that we are reduced to nothing upon sight. And so this is the opportunity for us to say who we are, to let people know that just as you want to raise a family and be happy in this world and abide by the laws of the land, we do too. We're not given the opportunity, but we want people to see our perspective and know that we have a heart, we have passions, and we want to, of course, achieve our goals in this life. So that's what Cycles is about. I hope people will leave thinking this is my story too. And yes, this is one of the questions that I grapple with on a day-to-day basis. And yes, I am hopeful in the midst of adversity, in the midst of turmoil, that I will be resilient, I will go strong, I will wake up every day with a certain consciousness, knowing that I have to keep going on, because that's just what we do.
Absolutely. And a couple of things that you mentioned so far throughout the interview that's very pertinent and very important of why the Brothers Network exists is, one, we talk about theaters trying to diversify.
Yeah.
And while there's some diversification that's taking place in the cast, there's not so much in the audience. So that's where we come in.
Yeah.
It is up to us to get more, particularly black people in our network, to get to the theater and see performers such as yourself.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to do, and that's part of my charge, is to be an artist that reaches out to people of color, to say, hey, it's great when we see people in the audience that are supporting us. And one of the things that I'm trying to use as a platform, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and Kappa Alpha Psi is in Philadelphia, which is the home city of the opera company that I'm working with. And I'm already engaging those guys to say, look, I need you guys in the theater. I want the administration to see you. I want the other people who come to the theater to see you, successful black men who have a great appreciation of art and classical music and whatever it is, to come into the theater, because I think that changes the narrative too. But I want to be the impetus. I want to be the person. One of my best friends, he's a member of Omega Psi Phi, and he's also trying to do that with his fraternity. But to use these as opportunities for us to reach out to men of color, and not just people that are in the Greek system, but all the different entities, 100 black men, and all these various things. We want people to come out. We want them to know that we do this, and we are given the opportunity. We've been afforded or blessed to excel in this, but it does mean a great deal to us when we go on stage, and from the stage we can see a peppering of the audience of people that look like us, and that makes us feel great.
Do you have any idea of why there is an obstacle, or maybe why there isn't a lot of people of color who come out to these performances?
Well, I think there's a certain stigma that is not necessarily for us. A lot of people don't know that we have a tremendous legacy in classical music. Many of the important names in classical music were people of color, many of them being female, but the great Leontine Price, Shirley Barrett, Grace Bumbry, so many of these names that sang in all the most important theaters in the world were people of color from Philadelphia, from Augusta, Georgia. And so we have a tremendous legacy. So if people are armed with this information, I think they'll be more likely and inclined to come to the theater. I think it was also thought of as a rich man's activity, and so they feel like it's not necessarily for us. But now, we're doing everything. We're owning businesses, and we're successful in medicine and law and so many different things. And so we have the means and resources to come. But if we can strip away the stigma that it's not for us, if people can see people of color on stage, in the orchestra, in the administration, in the chorus, in the technical staff and the support staff, I think people will be more inclined to come to the theater, because they will feel like they're invited to the party, if you will.
Absolutely. And we talked about what it means, what do we want black men to take away from this, but what about for non-black men, for non-people of color? How do you want them to react and to appreciate your performance?
I don't think we're not looking for sympathy, but we want people to understand. I think people will have a sense of empathy for us, better understanding, better acceptance, more openness to try to put themselves in our places, to say, okay, I get it. And in turn, I think I need to approach something in a different way. Some people, again, when they see me or see other people of color that are doing things, and when we can begin again to control the narrative, we're saying facts, we're giving them facts, and if people can take a step back and say, okay, I get it, I think that is the beginning of course of a certain softening or acceptance or just an idea to further immerse themselves in a culture that is diverse. That's accepting of all nationalities, starting with men of color, obviously. Sure.
Having traveled to 45 countries in your life, what do you find unique or disturbing or inconsistent about race relations in the U.S. versus, let's say, France, Italy, or some other foreign nation?
Well, I have to say that places like Italy, Spain, some of these other countries have a much more recent history with people of color in them. But not England and not France. A lot of these, the thing I find inconsistent is that, a black man can go to war and serve this country and die for this country. But there are certain things, unspoken laws that still exist, unspoken treatment, a predisposition to judge and to perhaps be overly aggressive, of course, when we think about people being targeting, just traffic stops and other things like that, there's a certain mindset or opinion of what we are as black men in America. And I don't find that exists directly in some of these other countries like England and like France, where there is a long-standing history of people of color. They seem to be more accepting. It's probably more of a class thing than a color thing. So the fact that this country still has many problems with the treatment of African American men, people of color in general. Of course, you see it now with people from some of these Arab nations and Mexicans as well. They deal with some of the discrimination that we have dealt with a long time. And I don't want to say who's on the bottom of the totem pole, but people still deal with it. So the fact that I can go to these other places and not have to deal with it, or see that the people, the citizens of that country don't have to deal with it, I say in this country, United States, we still have work to do in this respect.
Switching gears a little bit, looking back on your career with the many performances that you've endured, what would you say is one of your most favorite?
Performances?
Yep.
Oh gosh, there's so many things that I've had happen to me. I got a chance to perform with Ruth Bader Ginsburg at Washington National Opera, one of the Supreme Court justices, and she's been incredibly supportive of my career for many years. But I had the opportunity to share the stage with her, someone who has a passion for classical music, someone who lives and breathes diversity and inclusion, someone who has always been so kind to me. To share the stage with her was one of the wonderful moments in my career thus far.
That's outstanding. And how can more young black men become involved in opera? You talked about some of the initiatives that you're pushing.
I say give it a chance, and I feel like with companies like Opera Philadelphia, with companies like Lyric Unlimited, and the programs that are happening at Carnegie Hall and some of these other venues around the United States, there's more of a push for diversity. And so, again, myself as an artist, I'm leading the charge. I'm trying to be in the trenches and to deal with education programs, and even going into schools and high schools and elementary schools to talk to kids and to show them that we're not that far away from Beyonce. Bruno Mars is okay, stylistically a little bit different, but the same commitment that they have to their craft, we do as well. And I think this can touch people at a very, very deep level if they give it a chance. So how can more black men be involved in opera? If you listen to some of the music and some of the samples of some of the great rap songs, those were sampled from some of the great classical masters. Haydn, Beethoven, Bach, Mozart. These little riffs, didn't just start. Of course, you might have heard it in some jazz, but jazz took it from somewhere, and those links go all the way to back to classical music. So if people know that I grew up in the church singing gospel and all the melismatic, doing runs and all this other stuff, I have that as a part of me, and it's a part of it's a part of what defines me. But also, classical music is something that you don't have to be uncool in order to appreciate classical music. And you can like Beyonce, and you can like Wiz Khalifa, you can like all these people, and still appreciate Mozart, Beethoven, and Bobby McFerrin, and Take Six, and all these other people, because music is just music. Just give it a chance.
Absolutely. And this song cycle that you have coming out now is sort of autobiographical, I would say. Would you ever plan on doing something more biographical on a prominent black person, whether it be Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Arthur Ashe?
Yes, I would love to. Arthur Ashe was one of my fraternity brothers, and so I have a great passion for. I'm a tennis player too, so there's a connection right there. But I have a dream of doing something on the life of Martin Luther King Jr., something that's very thoughtful and well planned out, and Medgar Evers, and there's so many people, wonderful people, that a compelling, I think, moving opera could be written and touch a lot of people. I just did something on the late jazz saxophonist Charlie Parker, who was a jazz icon. So I did an opera of his already 4 times, once in Philadelphia, once in Chicago, once at the Apollo Theater. And so this was an opera that spoke about the jazz musician. So there are a lot of wonderful characters and people in history that operas can be written on, and I definitely want to be a part of those, and bring this to people of color, but not just people of color, people who have a passion for classical music.
What would you like to tell the audience to expect at Cycles of My Being?
Well, Cycles of My Being was written, composed by an African-American composer named Tyshawn Sori, an African-American lyricist with contributions from myself, and myself singing, and it'll be, when we do the debut performance in Philadelphia, it will be 4 musicians on stage, all African-American men. This is to show that we are capable of presenting something that's well thought out, well planned. We bring our different experiences, our lives, journeys together to create. We brought this together to create something. So I think they should expect something that is heartfelt. Hopefully that is, as I used the word compelling before, informational, something that I can say, something they can relate to, and that really tells the story that we live on a day-to-day basis. And so that's what I hope the audience, that's what I tell them to expect when they come to Cycles.
That's fantastic. And is there anything else that perhaps I didn't ask you that you'd like to add?
For me, it's a project that I am happy to be a part of. A lot of younger men, I'm 45 years old, and a lot of younger men of color, African Americans, and not just African American, but minorities, come to me and use me as a role model. I don't consider myself necessarily a role model, but I think it was Charles Barkley that said, the retired Hall of Famer basketball player, who said, he never grew up wanting to be a role model. You become a role model by being successful, and people look up to you by what you've accomplished and what you've done. And so I feel incredibly blessed to have done the things that I've been blessed to do by God. And so for me, it's just, I'm a representation. I am them looking in the mirror. I'm telling our story, and I hope that they will come and appreciate the heart and the research and just the meaning that we've put into this song cycle, and that they will get something from it.
Great. Thank you.